So let's dig in, because it's going to be a great conversation. So Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are right now and what you're doing?
Yeah. Hello, I am Nick Dawson, and my day job, where I spend most of my time, is running the Innovation and Human-Centered Design team for Johns Hopkins Medicine. And we, in healthcare, we don't even know of 2.0 yet, so there's no danger of us using any of the startup terms. Healthcare is a pretty regulated and, in a lot of ways, I think it's safe to say, antiquated industry. And our team's job is to push against all of those boundaries and try to make things a lot more patient-centered and more provider-centered when we're able to.
Great. And Sarah, how about you?
Hi, my name is Sarah Rothenberg. I work at AltSchool. AltSchool is a team of technologists and engineers who are co-developing a platform to superpower educators in the classroom by leveraging personalized instruction. And we co-developed this platform as a team. And my background is actually in education. I'm a former kindergarten teacher. I taught for 10 years before joining AltSchool as an educator, and now I work as the operations and innovation lead, kind of helping this co-development come to life and run the operations of our schools.
Great. And Aaron?
I'm Aaron Wickstrom. I'm a managing partner of Wickstrom Dairies and Valsigna Farms. We're located about 90 miles east of here in the San Joaquin Valley. I am the fourth generation of our family to run our family farm. We farm about 1,000 acres and have 2,400 of the little pretty Jersey brown cows that are great for milking cheese. So if you've ever eaten any cheese, there's a possibility maybe some of it started at our farm. We run, being in the farming business, having animals, we work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and this year we're celebrating our 77th year in business. So with a complicated mobile workforce like that and multiple locations, we found Slack has kind of been the perfect tool to kind of bind all that together and be able to communicate efficiently.
And I have to ask, Aaron,
Yes.
do you plan on going directly into the family business?
I did not. So growing up, I enjoyed working on the farm, working, with the people on our team. I was like, this is a lot of work. It's almost more of not really a job, a lifestyle, because it is 24 hours a day. It never shuts down. It never stops. So I went to finance, went to school in Chicago, thought I'd go into investment banking or kind of the hedge industry, risk management. And when you got to my senior year, after a few internships, like, okay, your first year out of school, it's going to be 90 hours minimum work starting out. It's like, well, if I don't work 90 hours, I may go back and try the family business, because that would be kind of the hours getting started again. So went back, gave it 2 years, ended up falling in love with it, and love what I get to do every day.
Awesome. So Nick, I think a lot of us hear about Johns Hopkins being a very innovative and forward-thinking institution, but you're here sort of introing and telling us that we are not in the 2.0 category. So I'd love to understand a little bit about the process of introducing new technologies, tools, or just sort of your approach in general to innovation in the hospital.
Yeah. So I think there are kind of two halves to healthcare, right? There's the part that's the medical science side, and I look at the breakthroughs that are coming out with things like CRISPR, that's gene editing. I still think an X-ray is rocket science. I mean, I think there's some things that we do in the medical side of things that is just incredible breakthroughs in science. But from an operations standpoint, healthcare hasn't changed in 100 years. It's still this kind of factory operation where regrettably, the patient is often the product, the thing that moves through the factory floor. So a lot of our work has been kind of two things. One is to be directly applied. So we're physically in the main lobby. We have a big 6,000 square foot space in the main lobby of one of the hospitals. So we try to go from inspiration, usually based on hearing from patients or family members and their needs, to implementation really, really quickly. And in doing that, we've realized that another big part of our work is exporting our style and our culture. So our team looks very different than any other team in a hospital. We work in an open workspace. We work on Slack instead of email. And that seems kind of like a little thing if you're used to working, I think, in a more modern work environment, but it's a pretty radical thing to healthcare. So it's a lot of pushing those traditional boundaries, and that we're starting to find out where we run up against some of the norms. And some of that has been around IT-based innovation. We run a completely separate parallel network in the hospital that we put in the quietness of night, and it existed for about a year, and then we use it for IoT devices, we use it for VR, we use it for all of our innovation stuff that's not clinical, so we don't put patient information on it. And we got away with it for a long time, and we're starting to get some questions about things like that, and we're having to go back and maybe prove the value isn't the right phrase, but go back and explain why having a open non-clinical network is an enabler of innovation for us.
I think one of the things you learn when you're trying to push forward new ways of working or new technologies in organizations that are a little bit more entrenched is that you often ask for forgiveness later, right? You just sort of go forth and see what happens and then prove the case.
That's very much true, yeah.
Sarah, I think you're in a very interesting environment where you are blending engineering and technical expertise with all of the mastery involved in teaching and bringing forth the next generation of leaders. You have a great background because you are a teacher. So talk a little bit about how AltSchool is making it possible for teachers to collaborate with engineers and each other in a way that you couldn't in a traditional classroom setting.
Yeah. So what's unique that I didn't really mention about AltSchool is that we have 4 actual lab school campuses here in San Francisco, and we have 3 in New York. And each lab school has educators, amazing educators, who are collaborating in the 4 walls of the school. But because we are able to leverage technology like Slack, we're able to collaborate in a group of educators and colleagues that's so much greater than just what's available for us at our school site, or even as an educator. It can be really lonely being in the classroom. Yes, you're surrounded by these amazing little people who are doing amazing things, but it's not the same as really kind of having that collaborative interaction with other adults, both educators and engineers. So one of my favorite examples of kind of how we're doing this and using Slack is we have a Slack channel that's called Magic Wand. And within the Slack channel, we have educators and engineers in product and design. And an educator can be in the classroom teaching and have this moment where they just say, oh, I wish I had this. This could superpower my teaching. This could superpower my students' learning. And they can enter that in the Slack channel. And all of a sudden, it's broadcasted to our entire team at the headquarters that's working on really building this technology and building this platform. And yeah, it's one of my favorite channels to kind of see all the great things happening. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months, 2 years later, we actually see that product come to life. And it's really amazing.
How do you think that has changed the way the engineering team or the product management team develops their products or thinks about their users? Because they have this really direct communication channel. So what's changed there as a result of this?
Yeah, well, the educators are also the ones building the technology. So it's for the educators with the educators. So I think, you know, I didn't grow up working in technology. So for me to kind of think that when I was teaching, I was using all these tools, and so often I would think to myself, like, who designed this? You know, like, what? I can't use this. This doesn't really help me. So I think for an engineer, someone that's working to build this product, to get to actually be in the classroom, co-developing with the educators and with the students, just, you know, really takes it to the next level.
Awesome. So Erin, your farm really is an early adopter. You have integrated a lot of different types of technologies and tools into the operations and how you work. And I'd love to understand your process. How do you choose new technologies, evaluate them, and then ultimately roll them out? Because you have a lot of daily tasks going on. You don't have a bunch of people sitting in a conference room every day and the luxury of having training sessions and things like that. So how does that process work?
For us, we strive, each and every day to, make sure our operation that we kind of have that culture of continuous improvement. I always have a drive. I wake up and, we tackle a problem. How can we do this better? There's got to be a better way. So when the first thing we look at, if whether it's a digital tool, piece of equipment, or a new process we're going to implement on one of the farms, the most important question, the first question we ask is this going to make the job easier day to day for the people on our team? Because our people are our most important resource that we have. We have a fantastic, talented group of people I get to work with every day. So if that question is yes, then we'll look at, okay, how can we quantify, is this tool making it easier? How is it going to drive efficiencies in the overall operation? If those both questions are yes, then we'll go ahead and move forward with it. And part of that is right from the beginning is make sure that our team is involved in that planning process, how we're going to use that tool. I think one of the reasons Slack has been very successful for us and everybody uses it for the past 2.5 years we've been using it is because they were in at the ground floor. I had a harebrained idea of we have to make our communication system better. I told Janine previously on a call, we have a lot of complicated equipment on the farm, keep things running. One of them is a solid separation system that deals with the back end, waste stream from the cow. So with that, there's tons of pumps, roller presses, solid separation equipment, automated equipment, and sometimes stuff will go awry at 2 a.m. So that equipment will send a text out to a team of people that are trained in taking care of that. And before we use Slack, I think we're just a really polite group of people, and no one wanted to call the other person or text them in the middle of the night, wake them up, be like, I'll take care of it. So, if it's 2 a.m., I was guilty of that too. I'd go out and be like, okay, I got it. I'm going to fix it, let everybody sleep. Well, within 10 minutes, I got 4 other people showing up. And I look at them like, this is crazy. It took 2 minutes to fix. So that was kind of the advent of, how do we have a system that allows quick communication? We're not having redundant, crossover of people showing up multiple jobs. Just run more efficiently, especially when it just takes one person. Or if you need help, it's really easy in real time to request that help or ideas. So it's kind of a group effort to implement those tools and technologies.
Just want to hook on to something, Sarah, you said that I'm totally inspired by. We've been rolling out tablets to patients and families, and the primary use case is to literally just get real-time feedback. And right now it's a smiley face scale and a free-form text field. And we get that into Slack in real time. And I think the idea of saying, instead of how's your experience, to say, if you had a magic wand and could make your doctor's visit, your healthcare stay better, and then take that and make that our product development in the sense that our product is healthcare, right? That is a really cool idea. So I hope we can steal that.
That's that.
Awesome. This is a liquid network, happening in real time. One of the things we really did when we were getting to know each other, talk about co-development a lot, and you touched on it a little bit. I'd love to hear more about that, specifically as it relates to empowering the different groups that you work with. Because this was the theme that came up, that part of the co-development process means that you don't impose things on patients or on the nurses or the staff, but they're actually advocating for themselves in a way that feels incredibly natural and fluid. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about that from each of you, because the environments are so different. And interestingly, you also all have pieces that are very on call in nature and on demand in incredibly different ways. Well, Nick, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I took some notes last night. I was thinking about that very topic. And I looked at them this morning, and I realized I should not have written those notes after a day of wine tasting up in the valley, so they're not nearly as coherent as I thought. But then I spent some time this morning thinking about it. And I think for us as designers in particular, if we say we're design-driven first or human-centered first, the idea of not doing co-design feels wrong, especially in healthcare. That is a fundamentally human endeavor. And it's really hard. So when I talk to a lot of my colleagues and peers and counterparts in other places, they say, we would love to do co-design with patients, but it's so hard because 1,000 reasons. And chief among them is you have to treat them like an equal part of your team. And that feels like a really worthy challenge. And we've been doing it in a couple nascent ways, but are kind of putting a lot more energy into that. So one big step was saying, all right, we're going to bring on 3 or 4 patient innovators and residents. We're going to pay them like part of our team. We're going to give them transportation to and from the hospital because it's not easy to get to. So how do we level that playing field so that they can be truly co-designers with us? And I think another big part of that is saying we have to acknowledge that their energy level, their schedules are probably dictated by a lot of things, including their own life and hobbies and job, but maybe also what makes them a patient in the first place. If you're an expert user of healthcare, you by definition have that to deal with, and that's a hard thing to do. So we've been thinking a lot about it, but I think the biggest first step for us has been to pull them into the team a lot more actively.
Fantastic. How about you, Sarah?
When I think about co-design, the first thing that kind of comes up to me, which is also something that Nick, you touched on, is that relationship piece. It's really the co-designing and developing something that's not just a teacher and an engineer, not just a teacher and a student, not just a student and a parent. Like, it's this whole ecosystem of relationships that you're kind of building and tapping into, and you're taking the needs and recognizing the needs of our learners and our needs of our educators and our needs of our parents, because they're learning partners in the journey as well. So it's that whole kind of ecosystem of all the different players and how you have the relationships that contribute to kind of the mission that everyone's trying to drive forward.
And Aaron?
I think co-designing, any systems, I think it's, in today's day and age, you have to. Because, I look at myself, would I want to go work for a company where I had no say in how I worked? Everything was, traditional top-down. There's no say. So I think for us, we have extremely high employee retention, low turnover rate, and I think a key piece of that is everybody has invested interest in how they work. I don't have all the answers. I know what goals we need to strive toward and ultimately what needs to be accomplished. But in between there, I trust our people, the brilliance they have, the great ideas they have, to figure out that process. And we do that, together with a lot of brainstorming sessions, or, we'll start off with plan A, if we get halfway through, we found out, well, that didn't work so well. We need to make some changes here, tweak it a little bit to get to our end goal. And because that, people having that vested interest in the time and thought it takes to implement that tool or process or that piece of equipment, they have invested interest in making it succeed. So I think that's key to any organization these days.
I love all of the qualities that you're touching on. You're all touching on empathy, relationships, trust, adaptability, flexibility. Has that changed the way you think about who you hire and bring onto your teams, or the way that you celebrate behaviors and try to hold up, examples across your organizations?
Yeah, it certainly has for us. We have this, I don't know, maybe it's lofty notion, but we have this concept of saying, like, you need to bring your full self to the job. And it means being able to kind of ebb and flow pretty quickly and dramatically between being kind of goofy and talking about something that is completely not work-related and being very, very serious and deep about the work at the same time. And that switching, we see it happen on our Slack channel all the time, and sometimes it's segmented into different channels, but we do it in real time too, and that's a little bit of that thing that's where we're trying to export our work style to the rest of the organization. But it also, to your point, it has changed how we think about hiring people too. So our hiring process becomes, our joke is that we look for our kind of weirdo and we know them when we meet them. And part of that is having that conversation be very broad and very wide, and not just about the work domain expertise.
On that sort of culture exporting, and then we'll come back. But something that happened quite a bit in the government, right? A lot of what we did around tech and design was we created these small teams, and we empowered them to really accomplish things on specific segments of problems. And in that process, working with us and partnering with different parts of the big giant bureaucracy, we saw culture change. How is that going? Because it's funny, you don't often realize you're doing it until you step back and say, like, oh, everybody else wants an open office, or everyone else wants to get on Slack.
Part of that discussion that I danced around a little bit earlier, this kind of increased scrutiny of some of our tools, including Slack, happened the other day in the open, and one of my colleagues, one of our senior designers, misheard, thankfully. He heard that they're coming for our Slack board. And it was like this William Wallace moment where I think he was ready to grab a pitchfork and like, you will never take my freedom. He actually said, if that happens, I will pay for it on my own credit card and expense it back. And thankfully, that was not on the table and it wasn't a discussion. But I think a lot of it is it challenges people's maybe traditional notions and traditional power. So if you're, I think I can just say this isn't being recorded, right? And nobody else will ever know.
I think it is
Oh,
being
well,
recorded.
all right. So if you're,
it's not live streamed, but
if your power, if you perceive that your power comes from controlling the Exchange server and the firewall and the content filter, like our style of work really makes you confront whether that's actual power or if it's just having a key to something. And so I think sometimes what we're seeing is people just feeling insecure about their role, and it comes out as attacking our work style. At least that's the way I choose to look at it, because we can have a lot of empathy for that instead of anger.
Yeah, so let's build on that, just thinking about hiring and talent and, not getting the super controlling people in the room.
Well, I wanted to go back to a word that you brought up earlier, Janine, which was celebrate. And of course that resonated with me because I work in the kindergarten classroom, and if anybody has ever spent time in an elementary school classroom, you celebrate everything, which is an amazing environment to be in. But sometimes it just gets lost in that one isolated moment. And so one thing I wanted to kind of talk about is how it's changed our culture of celebrating, where, a child all of a sudden gets that TH sound. And it's like an amazing moment. And having something like Slack, where we actually have a channel that's called Gongworthy, that you can celebrate these small moments and these small wins, and again, broadcast it to a whole network of other educators who can totally appreciate that this child just got, that TH sound, or that something really amazing happened in the classroom, or that you just completed a really amazing lesson and you want to share it with your colleagues in our Brooklyn Heights campus or our Palo Alto campus. So I think that it's taken this culture of celebrating those really exciting moments, those gong-worthy moments, and making it shareable.
We call ours
that.
gratitude and appreciation. Your titles are much cooler.
We're teachers.
I love that what is normally in a more corporate setting is like best practice sharing becomes celebrations and gongs and gratitude.
We
This
have
is
those
much
too.
more fun. Aaron, how about you?
With the hiring process, the first question I ask everybody is, are you okay with change? I ask it about 15 more times because we run our business, want it to be transparent, and part of that is new stuff comes along. There's a lot of change, and we want to find people to adapt to that, and also just those qualities of being true team players. We look at no one's more important than anybody else. We're all team players, and everybody. I view each person on our team. They have so much to add, to the business as a whole. So try to operate that way, and just the culture of having an open communication tool. I felt like in the past, when that communication was a little bit different, stuff was kind of siloed, and what other people were doing were kind of a mystery, or they have a little easier than I do, or I'm working harder than everybody else. So kind of taking away those barriers and having free-flowing communication, everybody realizes that everybody works hard, everybody's trying their best, and to add to the team. So that has been key with our culture. Is this, if someone needs help, it's right there, real time, and people are willing to step up and do that every day.
It sounds like you all have fantastic teams, but let's get real for a second. There's always some resistance when we're putting in new ways of working, or we're saying like, oh, we're gonna try it and it might work and it might not, right? Sometimes there's some fatigue with that. So what are the other William Wallace moments that come to mind? What are the other times where somebody got really frustrated, or they really didn't want to do this and maybe overcame it, or maybe didn't?
Yeah, we recently brought in, I'm going to use both of the buzzwords you said not to. We just integrated our lean team into our innovation team.
And bingo, there we go.
Yeah. And I think they came from a much more rigid hierarchical operating model. And we sometimes on our team jokingly refer to our leadership model as kind of vacuum-based leadership, but in the sense that we create the vacuum and then let everybody fill it the way they want to best, or the way they're best able to. And I think for that team, at least the way they had been used to working, this idea of saying, we don't know what the answer is yet, but you are safe to go out and explore and figure it out, was almost like a radical lack of structure. And I think that they revolted against it a little bit and said, no, you have to tell me exactly what step A, B, and C are. And we said, well, it's a little bit like Lewis and Clark crossing the country. I know we've got to get to the West Coast. We know we shouldn't go too far north or too far south, but that's it. We have some guideposts, and we don't know what's going to be between us and the other coast. And I think they're getting more and more comfortable with it. But it also helped us say there are times when some more structure helps. Had to build that muscle.
Definitely. You have any thoughts on that, Sarah?
AltSchool started using Slack early on, like 2014, trying to remember 2014, 2015. And when we first kind of rolled it out, we had two teams. We had a headquarters, which was our engineer, product design, and we had our educators, which was our teachers teaching in the classrooms. And we did this thinking that, the educators were really busy in the classroom, which of course we are, but it was kind of like to protect both teams from kind of feeling like they were inundated with information or communication. And my role was kind of straddling these two worlds, where I was in the headquarters and I was in the educator, and like the teams weren't communicating. There was literally like a virtual wall in between these two teams. So we decided, a couple years ago to really break down that wall and to merge this like headquarters Slack and this educator Slack. So now all of a sudden everybody is one team, which, when you think back, we're like, oh, why didn't we just do that in the first place? But it was kind of a poignant moment where, of course this makes so much sense. And so now there's really all this amazing collaboration that's going on.
Awesome. Aaron, any moments of resistance or light bulb moments that you found?
Yeah, I mean, it always seems like we have that one person that, hates change, and thinking in our operation, that one person is usually the same person every time, but he's been with us for going on over 30 years. It's just a wonderful person, and he's one of those people that you have to prove that this is going to make it better. So, I mean, I think if you really sat down and thought about it, hey, in the past 10 years, the ideas and the tools we've implemented, my job is a lot easier today. So a lot of that is, just making the effort of making sure people understand why we're doing stuff the way we're doing it and why this change is good. We're not doing it to make their life difficult or upend stuff, especially for a person who doesn't like change. But so a lot of that, and that's good for us to think through why are we doing this? Are we doing this just because it's a cool thing to use, or is it really benefiting the people that are going to be using it? So that's, kind of with us, seems our process.
So I have a few more questions, but I just want to take a moment to see if there's any questions burning on the audience's mind, because I know we're between you and lunch. Okay, we are running a mic, so if anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand and grab the mic. One more thing, I'm really curious about is how do you define innovation in your organizations? Because this is something that we talked about a lot when we first met, how that is a word that's thrown around all the time, and sometimes it seems a little more lofty in the term than actually implementing it. So I'll start with you, Aaron.
So I mean, when I thought about that question, you think innovation, you think of big things, advent of personal computing, smartphones, Internet of Things revolution. But looking at our business, farming is a pretty mature business. I mean, it's been happening, since the beginning of time, and probably everybody here, if you go back in your family tree far enough, there's someone that was a farmer, most likely. So with us, it's not in our industry, not a lot of big seismic or disruptive changes, but we found there's been a lot of innovation in optimizing current systems, using the technology that's available. We're still doing some of the same things. We have to feed cows, we have to milk cows, we have to grow field crops, corn and wheat to feed our cows. Those have always happened, for hundreds and thousands of years. But the way we do it has changed. Just with, right now from my smartphone, I can look, 100 miles away, tell exactly in one of my fields what the soil moisture is. If it needs to be irrigated, from another app, I can fire up a precision irrigation system, all while sitting here. But before that was someone out every day checking fields, digging in the dirt, feeling, well, I think there's enough water in here. So a lot of that, there's small innovations, but they have a big impact on the way we work. And then, ultimately, it allows us to be better stewards of our resources, our people, our animals, our land, our water, and our air, because we've been fortunate to be in business for 77 years, 4 generations. Hopefully I want to leave our operation and all of our resources in better shape than when I started. So, I'm already working on my 4-year-old daughter, Ingrid, and telling her how fun it is to be a farmer, but her current career goals are medical doctor, who's also a ballerina, and a princess. So farming might have a hard time competing with those. Those are pretty cool.
How about Sarah? Innovation.
Your daughter sounds awesome.
She is wonderful.
She has a magic wand, I think.
She does.
Innovation to me feels a lot of the things that Aaron was saying in education. It's taking something that is old and innovating, making it new again, not replacing it, but taking the things that may need some TLC and kind of making it new and relevant to today's society and to the future. And I think education, it's really important to continue to innovate because we have little 4-year-olds that want to be all these things and we really want to meet them where they are. So taking something like technology and being able to not replace an educator ever, but to really superpower that educator in a way that they can meet the child exactly where they are, which historically, you go into a classroom, you teach a bunch of 3rd graders, the 3rd grade curriculum because they're all 7 years old. That's really not doing a service to put the child front and center of their learning and to kind of hone in on what it is that's going to excite them and what's going to propel them into this future that we don't really know what it looks like yet. So I think innovation really is taking that old thing and figuring out how we can make it new.
How about you, Nick?
Yeah, first of all, Aaron, I'm blown away. The only way, for the most part, to really know how a building full of patients are doing is to go room to room and have somebody physically put eyes on them, and that you can check soil quality and see equipment status on your phone remotely makes me jealous.
Yeah.
And, if your daughter does become a doctor, then she could bring that learning to healthcare.
Hopefully.
That'd be the innovation. I think for us, we've gotten really enamored with speed and very small things and being very applied. So we kind of stripped our human-centered design model down to, we call it listen, imagine, do. And we, starting last year, took everybody in the organization who was a leader of any kind, from the front line up to the C-suite, had to do, this was by our CEO's mandate, 2 human-centered design innovation projects to meet their goals for the year. And so we got really, we coached a lot of really small scope, fast things, and it's that idea. It doesn't have to be a supercomputer, and it doesn't have to be an app, and it can be this really simple tweak to a process or something already existing. To your point, Sarah, and that idea of doing it quickly and testing things quickly and seeing what works, and going from low fidelity to high fidelity and cheap or free to expensive, and kind of but doing it really quickly, but radically in service of the end user. That's about as succinct as I feel like I can get to a definition. Or it's just the bullshit corporate buzzword of...
I like all of these definitions much better. So last question, which is a little bit of a lightning round. We could not have done X without Slack. I'll give you a second, because I don't think I prepped you guys with that one, actually.
So I mentioned it, we were putting tablets in patients' hands. They can literally tell us how they're doing in real time. We're getting a better response rate than the government-mandated surveys we have to use in healthcare. It's changing the power dynamic in healthcare and making our patients feel empowered in a way that you normally have to surrender all of your autonomy when you're a patient. We could not have empowered patients without Slack. It is the core OS of our team for that.
That's awesome.
I'd say we wouldn't be able to have collaborated with rapid innovation without Slack on demand.
I could not be up here without my phone buzzing like crazy with phone calls.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, Aaron, and Sarah. This was fantastic, and thank you to everyone here for joining us. Oh, we do have a question.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be interested in you talking about how in your teams you deal with the multiple communications channel challenge, because you're communicating within your teams on Slack, but then you got a lot of other people that you have to communicate with. That's a complaint I get from mine is, okay, I still got to pay attention to, I'm in the government too, to Outlook, email for a lot of things.
We certainly struggle with that. The rest of the organization uses email. In some ways, that does create a nice little division. We can say anything that happens in this space is our kind of innovation space, and we know that if we're outside of it, it changes kind of our tone, our decorum, maybe our formality in it. But I think my honest answer is to acknowledge the struggle is real. And now text messaging for everybody that says, "Oh, my inbox is full," you can give him. It's too many modalities.
I'd also add to that, we're just in this incredible transitional inflection point, I think, where organizations are sort of using everything. And nobody's really decided on the suite of tools that work. So I feel like we're in this weird moment where we are all operating differently by organization and then teams within. I'm hoping time will sort that. One more question, and then we'll wrap up.
I'm super loud, so I can just scream into that school with you guys. I feel like the kid who's asking the class a question after the bell or something here, so sorry. So I know you guys are in the more traditional spaces, and it's one thing just to move from email and chat to Slack, and another potentially to add an application on top of that. We heard this morning something like 1,000 applications on Slack now. So have you guys had any experience with that, adding an application on top of Slack, and any cool anecdotes would be awesome. I'll add a brief funny anecdote. We ask a very simple yes or no questions, and somebody, we've had multiple times where people have responded, sorry, I don't know you, how do I know you are working at our organization? So things like that, just adding an application on top of
Slack. For us, we integrate G Suite and Google Drive, which has been valuable. Transfer files. If someone's a remote location, we can send it to that person if they don't have access to it already. We also integrate with Asana for project management and scheduling. We found that's been a great tool with kind of the dynamic nature of our business and real time. Our manager or myself, we can move stuff around, and makes everybody's job a lot easier, and also allows us to see how fast where they're at in that progress of getting a task or a job complete. So those have been, we keep finding new ones that add value to our workflow.
All right, well, I think we'll still be around in case more questions pop up. Thank you again for joining us.